Okay, so we'll look at the monetary emission that as to what might be beyond the journey, what might be like the home dimension from which like all the water manufacturer wine might have but to like for that word might be like the case that we don't bring. So like in that own actual home dimension of that of all the monsters like there might be that the mother of all the monsters might be present like the fourth monster which might under the like the being slightly a stationary kind of like ongoing monster which might still have that a lot of like wines, which might be extremely loud to and might be having like wines solo like and opening and which might be having extremely tough depending on so we can short find some of the not like the whole monster, the soul monster which might be present in that environment the monster and like that monster might have in like the symbols like this might have been exactly the parallel version of that pronoun or like the parallel version of that 11 or like the that is between like the parallel version of 11 and like the parallel version of Henry or like it might be one of like these scenarios which might have considered that a portal opening up a gate opening up to that kind of by act might have been what might have happened and then like and at that point like this mother of all monsters like soul monster might have since then insulated might have taken advantage of that situation by not that extending its like points from like the home buyers to like the bad words might have been like that might have been when like spreading that wine in like the bad words might have been like the player will finance so let's say like the giant monster wall like the soul monster might have been might be like the so monster from the combine so might be like the same or like giant monster wall so the giant monster wall like it has the soul monster might be isolate full left and like the power word and prove that the NRF like the passwords, although that the NRF of like the real world as well towards that the home dimension of that all the monsters and the source need to unite that with the things that we only here to the range. Like the blue might be the range of right now, so that is the might have the play the source monster that might have also created like the exotic matter as well, right? Like in the different like the creation of like the exotic man might have been to that, but not might lead to that most likely yeah, keep growing like the land monsters war and have like the land monsters war like gradually take over like then that if the backward and then like then that if the real world and so then that if the backward and real world too that the whole dimension of that so smarter might be like the case that will end up with like natural interruption serving of that background matter right now like an instantaneous to that killing of that the entirety of like the variable as well as like either the entirety of organs alone or like just the portion of like organs alone getting full into the service related incidentally getting pulled into like the home dimension of like the so most of due to that so background right now the created everything is like stability and balance and basically as like a consequence of that like this exactly happening. There's like the scenario like what it is it's like especially when the area right now is for like a team of like element of and carry to that fully make it towards like what they do is like the case and like while and at that point once they will be entering that case like at that point I'm going to bring like the stuff right awaiting them like the scenario that are producing while so invite elements of and carry with at that point on entering the case to take them to get them back to the real world like at that point then after like entering that gate that for the that gate to remove that through the exotic matter, like them totally ending up bypassing through that gate, like then ending up and like the home direction of like the person sort of like the scenario that I'm looking at. So instead of like the real world like the real platform of internet carrier ending up the home direction of exotic entering that case. So it's like the scenario that I'm looking at the it's so that the name of the right now is that witness current plan I do the development that is and I'm about and after like 2000 we to get up with the and they should bring Lucas to like the backward and then the purpose to like Lucas and to create a visual of that right outside like the case like the mind world and that way that's by so that to like or something to like maintain from the like and they that way to like form uh, that way like at that point by nothing will be something like right now I can remember working for like only to like to save the and to even I think that's something that only that which have not the case would be along the lines that right now would be hoping but like that we are looking for that they not happened because like I'm actually nothing like I can simply telling Hori at that point that if she that like that is definitely not going to let go that or like there is not going to let go of that with even if that Hori exits out of the cave. So like that way like I'm feeling more to the like I can still even while going through that suffering still stopping Hori in it's like it's not that I'm looking at and that way like Maxine and Hori trusting in that cave and feeling Maxine falling asleep. And at that point, I'm totally putting body still holding on to that, the painful that basically the possibility of that. Which like body might be having a little about the different can able keeping its word, and that way that body by naturally looking that game that body returning back to and that Henry at that point, and that Maxine is waking up from within that cave to that absolute shock that body having left the cave, exactly the scenario that I'm going to go in direction, right? Mungkin like sebelum nanti pencarian person right now is for like rather than setting it up a work and now right now they're looking for like that like no will control but now like no they're putting but not controlling will without necessarily that and using with to that cost of it to that and like showing such position right outside like the cave where like my channel already it's that scenario that I'm not fixing and looking very situation right so that definitely physical experiment that the cave in that Christmas might have been exactly that a real world location close to like real world where like Henry in like just in last night exactly after like taking bath thing that one second that now but Oklahoma place will might have been after by the joy will mother joy exactly itself when that Henry back and my job phase like in the same that things where like the entirety of entering like the program of stage and like the entire temperature of my down as one of Henry and that Henry my down ran on the stage tears might have been like with it and during that point I'm looking that Henry while drowning in that absolute sadness and that sadness that might have been eventually hidden himself within that exact cave in that witness mind while contemplating that the embarrassing moment while crying a lot and basically go through that absolute sadness uh, might have been what might have happened to like you know the construction right now is for like initially most likely for like a will would be controlled by the man that's showing up Maxine and Holly while trying to like escape through like now scale memories that initially running into will it's like the planning that so like at that point I'm really different like will most likely telling them that about that being with that have basically tried to that help them escape and everything and like the clear picture and still telling them that basically that will have already found out that about this powers and like will has found out like an escape route and basically it's that on the way to like escape is like through the exit of the cave so like they have to walk back to be along the lines that will be most likely in a conventional manner like telling maintain at Molly's like does not incredible difference. So like at that point also the brain for like Molly straight away falling for that and basically straight away believing will but like the clear look that maintain would be unlocked either straight away not falling for that attempt of that which proven of the attempt of getting another will or like I'm putting that the earth of space for like maybe maintain as well falling for but like I'm putting as like maintain try out like maintain body and that will be making it towards like about the negative electrical like that will like an about the matching remembering about like the past instead of like we can add with as like a spices if they are looking for like matching and that will last second like topic only as like only could be about the like exit mode to give that matching so like body and stopping body and definitely telling that like you are not coming to that now so like at that point I'm not putting like the been getting information like immediately at that point like definitely Henry at that point like appearing from like the outside of like the cave and basically at that point that will straight away capture and vaccine and Dragon Mansion out of that cave is like it's not that under the point while Manson will be shouting out to like body to like stay within like the cave like it's not that so like at that point, I'm looking for like acting to the whole summary and those games. At that point, I'm looking for like that situation, like setting in like even though my team is starting off like for the next stage and like execute and into body exiting out of like the cave, like now that I'm looking for. And I'm looking for at that point like the moment like really will be exiting out of the cave, like and slowly one straight away and we with like the 6 9 like capturing body, like just not that I'm looking for At that point itself, like I'm whispering like Henry straight away, gives the order to that the control to that bring down like things like the single kind of system. So like at that point as like the knock of activity about to happen by will both the thing and that will last second is when I'm whispering for like the wormhole collapse like time to be up and basically the collapse of like the wormhole happening. It's like the scenario plan and the thing and like the moment like the wormhole collapse to be happening like I'm whispering like all the targets of that reckoning moving body getting free as well as like vaccine as well, referring back to that vaccine body. And on the targets as well, and of like picking up and exactly like their body. But like I'm saying, like them all getting pulled into that, what might be that the home dimension, the like about how like that, the thing the all getting pulled into that, the home dimension of like the first monster of all the white and what scenario that I'm looking at. So, essentially, at that point, when and all of them getting Mike and 11 and Gabby and all of them getting pulled into that home dimension of Microsoft implement from there compared to like the ultimate final so on that against black vector and like the source of black literally happening second in our therapy. So like the definitely to bring us some one third and total bring like an internet battle between that Vietnam and 11 happening in like the home line to so most of why and Python like the to have figured about like the for like system of like the source number and that way like and that went for like the team of like the film might and instead of them like teaming up and basically them focusing on finding that resource monster like finding like the exact location of the resource monster the thing like on dimension and like then would be attempting and like scoring like resource monster which might be extremely it's absolutely going to be a stationary but like will be extremely have like high difference and like uh, depends again to negate it might be like the case that taking failures. So and the player was trying to form of still staying close to that still staying close enough to that the core of that between that 11 and back the and then so the things to be enough things that eventually I'm looking at scenario one like was the getting tough and the next 11 the lot of it to be about to happen by the end of next witness but like at that will not again like pop up like so me interfering and saving 11 and basically, but like at that point, like the cost of like the loss of hormone by Vietnam happens. That is now that. So like at that point, I'm not going to being embraced and basically at that point, like 11 like making none of like come back to like time back against like a defeating the plane. Now with that, and the game with the probably the final scenario to be like by the time 11 will be defeating Vietnam. Like exactly when I'm so things simultaneously like and so many things were like Daddy going along with like the team of like Mike and other to like spoiling so but like that about it. So like exactly by the time we don't will be defeating like has exactly completely behind that the team of Mike and others like finally succeeding in like destroying like the source monster. It's like the window scenario that I wrote with another theory convention. That is so that the Lima Considering Consumer right now is that the cases that might have not existed for going for the green lecture in world and like other world and the other world and the master it might be that the home dimension of like the phone of the comic like motorbike and the amount of might have previously one might have been so the government might have been that the pattern in like the possibility like Henry and 11 that might have created like the wormhole like which might have began like the creation of like the and spreading of like the wormhole and like people might have quickly spread and made it uh, towards like connecting with like the other world which might have been like the home dimension, like the home dimension of like the might have been like the case definitely that was might have quickly happened and that quickly even that was that like the source monster made a right away spread to like the wind and kind of like the wines to like the railroad might have happened with new and definitely I'm referring like Henry during that battle against like 11 getting pulled into like the bad world like at that point like the bad world like Henry might have been present in like a different versions of like the dimension of time connected to like the real world might have been like the case that you know like that way Henry might have been so they people into like the hardware with like being like the future of like the real world eventually as like the song of black white puts in paper and paper like the real world in paper into like the real world and turns like the real world into like in like the future like turn like the real world into like the hardware so like it might be like that different versions of like the dimensions of like time like the future of the railroad that like might have ended up in after last those into like 11 in like that September that in like of that might have been like raised the name and the waste and environment. And so that the source monster and civil monster emission might be actively and person might be trying to like pull like the railroad closer and closer towards like the phone direction of the source monster towards like the source monster might be like the activity of the have activity of the situation so like something about that between like 11 and Henry happened might have been like the activity of like what might have been happening in that time is definitely so like Henry might be aware of just like this like from existence might be like that deliberately expecting that Henry might be trying to like speed up that process. Henry might actually want exactly that and might want like the railroad to get fully pulled through the wormhole to get fully swagged into like and put into and land on like the home climate of like all the wines and like all amount of that which might be exactly what Henry might be wanting to like to speed up the storms like Henry might be might have used the strategy of like having targets, multiple targets and basically, or that might be inaccurately entering strategy of like basically speeding up that process. Definitely might be very so definitely we might be seeing that home dimension and like that absolute utopia home dimension of like the older ones and devices that absolute utopia and basically might want the real world as well to that get eventually get merged with as soon as possible get merged with like that home dimension with the of the time that way for like the real world of the to like turn exactly like the home dimension of the model might be exactly what like Henry might do or exactly what everything but even but still had like Henry might be starting or like that might be starting unaware of that Nancy's like creation of like the interruption and like the lack of stability that happened to the exotic matter, like about the exotic matter, like maybe exactly unaware at present. Might feel like that really is it seems quite a very interesting, right? So like again still the like the revision that like can draw back now through the target of that but now might be trying to like figure out like the possible like what might be like when they're trying to like full like fantasy of like the real world to like sometimes the full movie might be like that to the case but you know very interesting. Yeah, like I'm looking so it will be like and things like interference like uh of like the Atlantic exotic man that they were going to the instability like the exotic man like and so trying just organs alone and not from things going from like pulling like tender to the real world to like the dimension of the cross monster and those things change from that to like when the scenario of like organs alone getting dragged and pulled into like the home dimension of like the to like the home dimension of like the source number selected scenarios like and that one of the to be happening only temporarily until eventually once from like everyone like the team of that my guess that would be eventually some feeling thing like the spot like the source monster right like the home dimension at that point I'm looking for like the source monster source points might be like holding source powers might be holding on to like the and might be even like the wormhole connected on the defeat of like the source monster like and like the or getting big chance then is that way that often at that point uh, through the wormhole itself that returning back before like the wormhole will be getting detached from like the original world like the source monster like and so bring that talking that returning back to that the real world like bringing the scenario finding so on the that like that what we have to remember until that point of like the for like the real world like in the being that huge massive or right like the entirety of like the area or like pockets where like the entirety of that pockets that will be from the ground up will be getting pulled into like that dimension from dimension that is not briefly until like the second sense of but where like at that point like the entirety of like the mountain like safely returning back to that giant hole where like focus will be and lack of this is a man of like turning back to its lack for the focusing that was infected so now it's that under the body for the younger direction right. So that's the clean on the right now is for lack maximum and 40 to lakh to the from the 10 lakh the cave in lakh and reach my goal like then most likely finding a secret door which I'm of the that we refer within the cave did exam to lakh now to lakh the memory of lakh and of that and now consists Oklahoma play which in which lakh and lakh might have take part in and the part in and might have been and that's the most embarrassing day and traumatic day of Henry's life. Might be the case, and that definitely referring to that absolute day of that absolute incident so that absolute occasion that absolute stage and referring to exactly that one that I'm referring like Henry and Jack Hollis and Maxine making it through the chaos like scenario that I'm referring, and like them seeing that in the exact and the influence of that phenomenon of great from that memory of Black Henry at that point, them seeing that a young Henry on stage and that everything that would have happened on during that Oklahoma play fundamentally understood that is that and that led them come to the realization of that why Henry is like prayer of like he was like in the scenario that was so different and was very important. That them to different for like 19 and 40 to like won't find an exit through like the cave but like I'm not different them finding that crucial information and I'm different like them actually using that against black, not like weapons against black Henry ones like Henry would be making them making it to eventually make it to a turn of sector in the scenario. Because I know the photo scenario that I'm going to that they are whispering like the crowd that would have made fun of Black Henry that during like the Oklahoma play might have shouted out might have been exactly why Henry might have been focused on the stage like like the crowd might have shouted out maybe and then like Steve Potter might have shouted led that the whole making fun of and by most likely shouting on a specific word and like the remaining of it, the crowd might have also repeated that very same word, which might be some specific word they might have used to that realistically like one of that Henry might have been used for giving training. So that left to bring like a 19 and 40 within that memory, like them hearing and finding out that word like putting out and bring and actually most likely using that word as like the as the weapon against like Henry then eventually they will be getting captured by Henry. So the like another possible scenario that I would say